Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
This is Julius Robert Oppenheimer, the physicist responsible for developing the nuclear bomb, quoting the Bhagavad Gita after the bomb was tested in 1945. America's triumph during World War II is partially attributed to the development of the atomic bomb, but although Oppenheimer was lauded for his part in it, it didn't take too long before the government went after him in what many have long called a witch hunt. To get into that, we need to rewind time briefly. The son of a wealthy Jewish merchant, Oppenheimer was born in 1904 in New York City. He studied chemistry at Harvard and then physics at Cambridge, where he researched atomic structure in the 1920s. That inevitably led him to take an interest in quantum theory during a joint professorship in the US in the 1930s. It was during this time that Oppenheimer also began developing an interest in politics, attending rallies and cultivating relationships with communists, although he never joined the Communist Party. One such communist was his brother, Frank. Another was Jean Tatlock, then a college student who Oppenheimer met at a party in 1936. The couple are reported to have had an intense relationship, and Oppenheimer proposed to her twice, but she declined, and they eventually ended their relationship. 4 years later, Oppenheimer married Catherine Puning, another communist sympathizer, and subsequently went on to work on the Manhattan Project, the work he is best known for today. But more on that later. Nazi Germany's 1939 invasion of Poland triggered fears among prominent scientists that the Germans would win the race for a nuclear bomb, but the fear later turned out to be overblown. Regardless, Oppenheimer began working on ascertaining the critical mass of uranium required to make a nuclear bomb. Meanwhile, Oppenheimer and Tatlock briefly rekindled their relationship. Remember this because it's important. In 1942, the US Army launched the Manhattan Project, a combined effort between British and American physicists to utilize nuclear energy for military purposes. By this time, the FBI had been investigating Oppenheimer's political activities for a year. Oppenheimer was given control of a laboratory in Los Alamos, New Mexico, to further this aim, and he did that in just 2 years. It subsequently led to the detonation of Fat Man and Little Boy, the nuclear devices that were used to bomb Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945. The dropping of the bombs triggered a deep sense of unease within Oppenheimer over the high number of civilian casualties involved, which he continued to grapple with in the following years.
I think that Hiroshima was far more costly in life and suffering and inhumane than it needed to have been an effective argument for ending the war.
11 days after the bombing of Hiroshima, Oppenheimer penned a letter to the US government, expressing his concern about nuclear proliferation. 2 months later, he told then-President Harry Truman that he had blood on his hands. The exchange didn't go well, with Truman reportedly smearing him as a crybaby scientist. Oppenheimer's opposition to nuclear weapons only grew after the war, particularly during the development of the more advanced hydrogen bomb. Meanwhile, against the backdrop of the Cold War, the US was undergoing McCarthyism, named so after Senator Joseph McCarthy of Wisconsin. McCarthy spearheaded policies persecuting left-wing figures out of the belief that communists had infiltrated the US government. Sure enough, Oppenheimer's appeals to reconsider the use of weapons of mass destruction fell right into the crosshairs of McCarthyism. That, along with his association with communist sympathizers, helped build a case against him. His security clearance was officially revoked by the Atomic Energy Commission after a 1954 hearing, effectively ending his career as a physicist. He passed away in 1962 at the age of 67 from throat cancer. Oppenheimer's clearance was never reinstated, but in 2022, the Biden administration revoked the 1954 decision, saying it was the result of a flawed process. But is it too little, too late?